You never know where your next client's gonna come from.
My name is Anna Oliver, and when you think of real estate, I want you to think of me.
Let me share with you one of my favorite stories that still makes me laugh every time I think about it. So you never know where your next client's gonna come from, and most of the time it comes from small talk. It comes from conversation, it comes from just meeting people, and usually the topic of real estate comes up. So I was on a plane coming back from Montreal to Toronto, and a gentleman was sitting next to me, and he said, "Fantastic, I'm looking for a realtor in Toronto." I'm like, "Amazing, perfect, let's set up a meeting." So we set up a meeting, and I was at the office ready for the meeting, and I get a call to say that my client had arrived. And the receptionist said, "Your client's here and there's a bird in the atrium." I'm like, "Okay, great," about my client, but I'm like, "Why do I care if there's a bird in the atrium?" I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "You'll see." So I go out into the lobby and there he is. Colorful, artistic type, and he had a parrot on his shoulder. A real parrot, a live parrot on his shoulder. And we had our boardroom set up, ready for the meeting, and I brought in another agent because you just never know. Sometimes it's better to work collaboratively, and I thought with this client it might be good. So we bring him into the boardroom, and the parrot's name is actually, I found out later, his chief operating officer, who he consults with quite regularly, named Casper. So we welcome Casper and the client into the boardroom, and you know, Toronto's a big city, and I always describe it as a city of 40 small little communities, and we had a map out on the table, on the desk, and to show different communities that may be of interest for our client and Casper. So our client kept kind of convening with Casper for decisions, and you know, he wasn't very familiar with Toronto, so he actually looked at Casper and said, "Casper, I don't know what you think." And as a joke, we said, "Well, why don't we get Casper on the desk?" So he took Casper off his shoulder, and Casper was on the map of the city of Toronto, and he started bouncing around. And we said, "Well, why don't you use your beak, Casper? Why don't you show us where you want to live?" So sure enough, Casper used his beak and pointed out different neighborhoods that he thought that they should be living in. And I had to thank Casper because he picked out some great places, and maybe I should hire him for my team and for some other strategic conversations. But yeah, Casper is the one that made the decision in this deal, Casper the parrot. And I think they've lived very long and happily ever after. And my colleagues still don't let me forget the day that I brought in the client with the parrot.
If you want to see more and to stay in touch, make sure to follow me on my socials or check out my website at annaoliver.ca.